I never anticipated that sharing my life with my new husband, Richard, and his son, Logan, would bring such depth and complexity going beyond the straightforward merging of our lives. Choosing to share my life with Richard has been one of the most fulfilling decisions I've ever made, even though it has come with unforeseen changes. Having just turned 21, Logan found himself at a pivotal moment, contemplating his next steps after completing his studies. When Richard departed for work, it often meant I found myself alone with my son. Between us, everything felt so easy, almost too easy. Initially, our relationship felt quite distant, but as time passed, we found a way to connect and understand each other better. Logan was thoughtful and displayed a level of maturity that surpassed his years, creating a very comfortable relationship between us. Initially, I perceived his kindness and courtesy as mere gestures, but as time passed, fleeting yet meaningful moments arose, prompting me to question whether there was something deeper, something we both hesitated to acknowledge. That morning, everything came to a head. I found myself at home looking forward to a peaceful day while Richard was away. I was in the bathroom wrapping up my morning routine. The sound of the shower filled the room as steam gently rose and settled on the mirrors. As I sat in quiet contemplation, I revisited the conversation I shared with Logan the previous night. The conversation ended up being rather peaceful. We shared our thoughts about the future that awaited him and the dreams he was pursuing. Yet, I sensed a lingering doubt in his gaze that stayed with me. That morning, as I stood in front of the mirror drying my hair, I heard a sound at the bathroom door, and Logan's voice resonated from the other side. It falls gently. Are you present? It caught me off guard when I blinked. Logan often skipped the formality of knocking on the bathroom door, particularly during those quiet early hours of the morning. After taking a moment to reflect on my image in the mirror, I turned towards the door. Absolutely, Logan. I'm right here for you. How have you been feeling lately? After a moment of silence, I sensed the faint sound of movements coming from the other side of the door. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I need to grab something from the bathroom. Would you mind coming in for a moment? For a brief moment, I felt uncertain. The steam lingered in the room as I wrapped myself in a thin towel, my wet hair cascading down after the shower. Logan's voice carried a sense of purity, making it feel natural that he would seek something from me. I agreed, making an effort to maintain a calm tone in my reply. Please, come in. With a gentle touch, the door opened and Logan knocked softly, his voice filled with worry. I would like to discuss something significant with you. He wore sports pants, and his hair was tousled, as if he had just emerged from sleep. After glancing at me, he swiftly turned to the closet, eager to find what he was looking for. As I stood before the mirror, I noticed a change in our interactions, prompting me to reflect on our evolving relationship. As I entered the room, his gaze lingered on me for a few extra moments before shifting away. I felt a sense of concern when I realized that something was troubling him. Not long after, I observed that he had stopped his search. I discovered it, he softly spoke, cradling a jar of pain relief medication. Yet, rather than departing, he chose to remain. Once more, his gaze lingered on me. Are you preparing for something special? Not yet. I'm just beginning my day, I responded, meeting his gaze, striving to maintain a sense of normalcy. Why is that? Resting against his shoulders and the bed, the atmosphere in the room grew heavier with every moment. I feel uncertain. There's a noticeable shift in you. I was truly taken aback by that comment. Have I gone through any transformation? I turned to him, wrapped in the towel, and gazed at him intently. There was a depth in his eyes that spoke of mysteries I had yet to understand. A profound and overwhelming feeling, a wonder that took my breath away. Have you seen any differences in me lately? Could you clarify what you mean? I spoke to him in a calmer manner than I had planned. Logan ran his tongue over his lips, momentarily diverting his gaze before meeting my eyes once more. I'm finding it difficult to put into words. I'm feeling uncertain about the answer. I found myself in that moment feeling lost for words. The silence that grew between us felt increasingly heavy. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken tension, leaving a sense of uncertainty in how to confront it. It was Logan, the son of my partner. It felt wrong to have these emotions. I felt a deep conflict within myself, striving to understand the dynamics of our evolving relationship. Before I could find the words, Logan stepped closer, closing the distance between us. As I gazed at him, I felt my heart race. uncertain of what to do next. He paused a few meters away, gazing at me intently. He conveyed it with a gentle voice. I apologize if this sounds unusual, but recently I've been going through something that I find hard to comprehend. In an instant, I found myself unable to breathe. I was left without words. I felt uncertain about the best way to respond. Honestly, I felt the same emotions, sensing that subtle shift in our bond, as if we were drawing closer in a new way, transcending our familial ties. I started to speak, my voice quivering slightly. Logan, I truly don't understand what's happening, but just as I was about to finish, he leaned in a bit closer and softly brushed his hand against mine. The interaction was tender and thoughtful, leaving me with a sense of excitement. It was thrilling, filling me with a sense of wonder. As I watched it unfold, I could feel my heart racing, a clear sign that we had crossed an unforeseen boundary, even though it had gradually built up over time. Logan whispered, "I know it's not right," as he held my hand, his voice trembling with the weight of his feelings. But I can't control my emotions. Words failed to come forth. The intensity of the moment was profound, leaving me in deep reflection. My mind swirling with thoughts that felt too complex to grasp. He was my lord, the guardian of Richard. Nonetheless, the deep connection I felt for him was unmistakable. In that moment, I felt compelled to say that I needed to leave, taking a step back and breaking the connection between us. I felt the quiver in my voice and sensed the warmth rising in my cheeks. Logan expressed his deep sorrow with a gesture of anguish, whispering an apology. "I'm sorry," though it came without true intention. "All right," I spoke up, striving to find my balance once more. "Let's connect later." I hurriedly followed him, leaving the bathroom behind without a moment's pause. My mind was a whirlwind of confusion, guilt, and an emotion I wasn't ready to embrace. As I gently closed the door of my room, I found solace and renewed my spirit within its embrace. My heart continued to race within my chest. What just occurred? How did everything unfold so fast? What should he consider doing next at this moment? Even though nothing particular had occurred, I found myself feeling completely lost, uncertain about what my next move should be. Throughout the day, I made an effort to pretend that everything was normal. I completed the housework, took care of the shopping, and focused on moving past the memories of what occurred in the bathroom. No matter how hard I tried, Logan's memories lingered in my thoughts. His closeness, the warmth of his touch, and the depth of emotion in his eyes, which I had never seen before, lingered in my heart and mind, making them unforgettable. The outcome was not what I had hoped for. I married Richard, and Logan became my stepson. Our connection was meant to be straightforward and intimate, yet at some moment a shift occurred between us, and I didn't recognize it until it was too late. I found myself spending the majority of the day in solitude at home. After our meeting, Richard departed on one of his work trips, leaving me to ponder my thoughts in solitude. At home, the silence was profound, enveloping me and compelling me to face the reality of what had transpired. Time and time again, that moment replayed in my thoughts. The warmth and closeness we shared, the power of his words quickening my heartbeat, and the undeniable attraction I felt. As night descended, the unease within me grew stronger. Throughout the day, I did not receive news of Logan, which brought me a sense of calm. I felt uncertain about how to approach him after everything that transpired, and I didn't know how to respond if he brought it up. Yet, a part of me, despite my efforts to ignore it, deeply yearned for his presence. I found myself endlessly wondering about where he was, what he was thinking, and whether he felt the same sense of uncertainty that I did. As I sat on the sofa, cradling a nearly empty glass of wine, I suddenly heard the sound of the main door creaking open. A leap across my heart. I let go of the glass right away and focused on finding my calm. Shortly after, Logan entered the room with a blank expression. As our eyes locked, a profound silence enveloped us, each of us lost in the depths of the other's gaze. The tension between us was palpable. He greeted me softly, breaking the stillness with his warm words. He spoke in a gentle and uncertain manner, as though it was challenging for him to come near me. Upon hearing his greeting, I responded with a voice that quivered with emotion. Upon waking, a wave of unease washed over me. He shared his feelings of doubt. "I wasn't certain if you would come back today," he replied. "Yes, I just wanted to enjoy some time outdoors." He looked out through the glass, his thoughts drifting beyond the surface. He displayed a sense of unease, as though he was racing to discover the perfect words. Yet, there was something more in his gaze, something that reflected my own feelings. Despite my efforts, my thoughts consumed me. It was my moment to share my feelings, to shed light on the circumstances that surrounded us, to bring clarity and understanding to everything. Yet, I found it difficult to convey my thoughts through words. I kept my gaze on him, observing how the shirt molded to his torso and how his dark hair gently fell over his eyes. He had changed so much since the day I married Richard. He had undergone a profound transformation in his adult life. In that moment, surrounded by the stillness of the room, it became impossible not to feel it. Logan approached, expressing his sincere apologies for our previous conversation. His tone was gentle. He wished to keep the situation comfortable, yet I find myself confused about what transpired. I shook my head, releasing a heavy sigh from deep within. I expressed my thoughts verbally, yet my tone clearly indicated that things were not right. I was caught off guard. All right, let's eliminate all these possibilities. He gave a slight nod. As he raised his gaze, our eyes connected in a profound moment. I often find myself questioning my place within this family. At times, I find it challenging to express myself to you. I understand that it's not right, but managing my emotions is challenging for me. The words he spoke left me trembling, and I felt a profound sense of suffocation. I felt a deep need to convey something that might prevent this situation from spiraling further out of control. Yet, I found it impossible to dismiss the truth of his words. There was a connection between us, something that had been building for a long time, and it was hard for me to come to terms with it. Logan, I started to speak. My words emerged with a gentle quiver. It feels utterly unattainable. This must not be permitted. You are Richard's stronghold. And I stepped in, his voice heavy with sorrow. Even with that understanding, my emotions remained unchanged. He moved a bit closer to me, and I felt the warmth radiating from his body. With every heartbeat, the distance between us diminished. I meant to step back, to create some space between us, yet my legs felt anchored in place. Instead, I stayed where I was, sensing my heart race, and rather than pulling away, I chose to reach out and take his hand. The connection was intense, enveloping me in a warmth that was impossible to ignore. I gazed in his direction. I felt a rush of emotions as I noticed the same feelings mirrored in his eyes. There was a sense of uncertainty, a deep yearning, and a heavy weight of remorse. All those emotions were openly shared right between us. Logan softly expressed his desire to avoid causing pain, his finger gently brushing against the back of my hand. But I can't continue pretending that this isn't real. It was difficult for me to accept. My thoughts were caught in a swirling mix of contrasting emotions. I felt a deep sense of conviction in my actions. There was a bond between us, something that felt real, unmistakable. But that didn't feel right, did it? I took on the role of a stepmother to him who was Richard's son. This action felt utterly unattainable. Being there, watching him, the warmth of his hand quickened my heartbeat. I realized that I didn't have the strength to separate myself. Not right now. No, not when we were at the edge of something so profound, so authentic. I found myself in a difficult situation, my voice barely escaping as a soft whisper. Logan stepped a bit nearer, his grip tightened as he held my hand. "We don't have to resolve everything right now," he said gently. "We must confront the situation instead of pretending it doesn't exist." The words he spoke lingered in the space between us, heavy with all that remained unspoken. In that moment, I truly understood the depth of his success. Continuing with the pretense was no longer an option. After a long time, the tension between us grew overwhelming, and once everything was laid bare, it felt like there was no turning back. Before I could respond, Logan expressed his feelings, leaving me in a state of contemplation about the boundaries of our relationship. In that moment, I chose to respond with a kiss. My hand gently rested on his neck, drawing him nearer to me. That moment captured the deep sadness and unspoken feelings we had held within ourselves. a deep sense of yearning, confusion, regret, and a profound emotional connection, something that felt like love. I was completely unaware of its significance. I was uncertain about the destination we were approaching. In that moment, I felt a sense of calmness wash over me. As we finally said our goodbyes, a deep breath escaped us both. With our foreheads touching and the weight of our recent choices, we were taken aback. However, instead of feeling remorse, I felt a different emotion, a sense of tranquility. I felt a sense of release when the built up tension between us finally came to a head. We no longer needed to wear masks. Logan gazed at me, his expression a mix of deep emotions. He asked softly, "What should we do next?" He hesitated, a sign of his inner turmoil. I haven't received any response. It was evident that everything between us had undergone a profound transformation. Yet, in that moment, as I held his hand, I understood that I didn't wish to return. In that moment, I conveyed that this was not the conclusion. Unknowingly, the words slipped from my lips. Then I added, "But we will discover a way forward together." A sense of calm enveloped me when he smiled, a feeling I hadn't felt since that morning in the bathroom. No matter what this signifies or how it changes, we will confront it side by side. The story is still unfolding. In the days that followed, we encountered a blend of serene moments, tender gestures, and unspoken emotions that lingered quietly between Logan and me. After the first kiss, we both felt the weight of having crossed a boundary. However, instead of feeling guilt or sadness, we felt a sense of relief, as if the tension that had lingered between us for weeks had finally lifted. Yet, in that moment of relief, we couldn't help but recognize that our future had transformed entirely. During Richard's absence for work, Logan and I frequently found ourselves alone at home. The moments of calm we shared together became profoundly significant. Each gesture and every expression of joy seemed to conceal unspoken questions. How does this relate to our group? Where are we going next? And most importantly, for how long can we maintain the confidentiality of this information? One evening, just a few days after our first kiss, Logan and I found ourselves together in the backyard once more. As dusk settled in, the sun gently retreated, casting a soft golden glow over the garden, while the air embraced a comforting warmth lingering from the day's embrace. We had grown accustomed to a comforting routine, spending our nights outdoors, engaging in lighthearted conversations, and cherishing the serene moments that blossom when two souls share a unique bond. Logan took a seat beside me. Our elbows brushed against each other. A wave of emotion washed over me as I felt the warmth of his skin against mine. I felt his gaze upon me, and when I turned to face him, he offered a gentle and timid smile that quickened my heartbeat. "May I pose a question to you?" He spoke softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Certainly," I replied, shifting my gaze slightly in his direction. He gazed at his hands as if summoning the strength to share his feelings. "Have you considered how significant this is in our circumstances?" It was difficult for me to take in as I felt my heart pounding strongly in my chest. My thoughts wandered endlessly. Yet I chose to remain silent rather than express them in words. I found it difficult to confront the reality of the situation that was unfolding between the two. I acknowledged that my voice turned out to be softer than I anticipated. I feel uncertain about whether I have the answers. He nodded slowly, his eyes cast downward. "I just want you to understand that this is neither fleeting nor short-lived, okay? Your significance in my life means a great deal to me. I frequently push beyond the boundaries. I recognize that this situation is challenging, and I find it hard to manage my feelings." The words you spoke lingered in the air, heavy with all that remained unvoiced. I felt a deep sense of suffocation, and my heart ached as I confronted the truth of your words. I felt a deep concern for his well-being as it seemed to go beyond what was safe. However, I felt a deep concern about what that meant for us, for our future together, for my relationship with Richard. I shared my worry for you, my voice quivering with emotion. This situation extends beyond just our individual experience. Richard holds a special place in our hearts and is deeply woven into the fabric of our lives. Should he find out? Logan's face showed a deeper intensity. As he experienced his emotions, he tightened his jaw. I truly understand your perspective. I care about him deeply, but I can't continue to overlook the feelings that arise between us. I searched for the right words as he gently bit my lip. Our bond was genuine, yet we understood that there would be repercussions. It was never my intention to cause Richard any pain. Even though I didn't want to let him down, I couldn't ignore the deep bond that was clearly present between Logan and me. I spoke softly, uncertain of what the right choice might be. However, I realized that I can no longer overlook this situation. When I looked up, Logan's eyes reflected a blend of emotions: hope, apprehension, and a deep yearning. He paused, reaching out to take my hand, his warm fingers gently intertwining with mine. The closeness enveloped me in a sense of peace, revitalizing my spirit in that moment. Softly, he conveyed that they would discover a resolution as he tenderly brushed his finger along the back of my hand. We will navigate through this together, regardless of the challenges we face. His words resonated deeply within me, filling my heart with unwavering belief. In that moment, everything came into focus. Fear, confusion, and uncertainty faded away, replaced by a calm sense of clarity. Even though we lacked all the answers, it was not crucial to possess that understanding. What truly mattered was our unity in this matter, and that our shared concern held the greatest significance. We stood in quiet reflection as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that danced gently across the garden. The gentle breeze lingered, and the distant chirping of crickets softly interrupted the serene stillness as day gracefully transitioned into night. I leaned my head on Logan's shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing, and a sense of peace washed over me, something I hadn't felt in ages. Even though I wished to hold on to that moment forever, the truth was always close at hand. Soon, Richard would return home, and the thought of seeing him filled me with a deep sense of unease. How do I confront the gaze, knowing the history between Logan and me? How can one keep up the facade that everything is fine when deep down nothing feels right? In the days that followed, Logan and I made an effort to stay calm, creating a sense of ease around us, even though we knew we had to confront the difficult reality of our circumstances. Our connection was clear, yet the regret that followed started to burden my heart. On the night before Richard's return, I found myself lying in bed, gazing up at the ceiling. Finding peace felt impossible amidst the relentless turmoil of my thoughts. In the peacefulness of the house, the only sound was the gentle hum of the air conditioning as it began and paused. Yet finding peace in sleep felt utterly unattainable. Thoughts of Logan kept flooding my mind, bringing back memories of our closeness and the deep connection we had, stirring feelings that had long been dormant. I realized that a choice lay before me. I found it incredibly difficult to navigate this situation filled with uncertainty, torn between my feelings for Logan and my commitment to Richard. Yet, the thought of making that choice, of parting ways with one of them, was overwhelmingly painful to bear. As I lay there, lost in my thoughts, I noticed a faint sound coming from the door of the room. My heart raced, feeling as if it were in my throat. I settled into my seat, and I could feel my heart racing with anticipation. I softly beckoned the person to enter. My words emerged with a gentle quiver. With hesitation, the door opened, and Logan knocked softly, his voice filled with worry. "I need to talk to you about something important," he said with a serious expression. After closing the door behind him, he sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the weight of the day settle around him. In that moment, silence enveloped us, and the weight of unspoken thoughts lingered in the air. He spoke softly, his gaze directed at the floor, sharing his thoughts on what he had said about Richard and acknowledging the challenges of the situation. "I would rather not pressure you into making a choice." It was difficult for him to accept. His sincere tone tightened a knot in my chest. In that moment, he suddenly interrupted, expressing his love. He spoke with a strong voice, filled with deep emotion. "I'm not sure when it occurred, but my heart is filled with a profound love for you. I realize that I cannot expect you to feel the same way, but I hope you can consider my feelings." The words he spoke hit me deeply, leaving me momentarily breathless. Deep within my soul, I always believed that he felt the same way I did. As he spoke those words aloud, the depth of his emotions resonated within him, making him feel truly genuine. "I, too, feel a deep affection for you," I whispered softly. The words slipped out beyond my control. Logan gazed at me, his eyes shining with a mix of surprise and hope. I asked, "Really? I completely resonate with that." My heart was pounding in my chest, yet that doesn't simplify things. In that moment of silence, I felt a profound stillness that left me at a loss for words to carry on the conversation. In that moment, I understood that I had come to a realization. I chose to reveal my true self, and my eyes yearned to connect with his. Looking back, I understand that my decision was driven by my feelings rather than logical reasoning. Yet, in that moment, I felt a sense of calm. He swiftly understood my message and embraced my proposal. I nestled close to him and shared a gentle kiss. We embraced our feelings, and everything felt profoundly intense. I chose to embrace my feelings, and in doing so, I found a sense of peace. Yet, just as everything started with such intensity, it also came to a swift conclusion. I can feel the excitement he must have experienced, and I truly understand it. In that instant, he extended his hand and took hold of mine. We stood in silence, exchanging a glance that spoke volumes. The weight of the world rested heavily upon us. With a sense of serenity and resolve, he spoke softly. "We will discover a way forward regardless of the challenges we face." In that moment, I felt a deep sense of trust in his words. Even though I knew I had to make a choice, I felt a deep certainty about what the right answer was. When Richard returned home that morning, I sensed a calmness that felt like the quiet before an impending storm. The weight of what was building up between Logan and me was unmistakable. He lingered in the atmosphere like a mist, enveloping us in a way we couldn't escape. With Richard's return, we sensed that changes were on the horizon, though we remained uncertain about what they would entail. Our relationship has taken a turn that I never anticipated. We had arrived at a deeper understanding of our complex emotions. No matter how hard I tried to forget, it lingered, always near and steadfast. Upon his return, Richard was welcomed with a warm embrace, a gentle kiss on the cheek, and the familiar comfort of their usual routine. We reminisced about the times we spent apart. Richard appeared unaware of the quiet gap that had formed between us. The joy he once expressed filled the home with a comforting sense of familiarity, yet beneath that facade, he felt a heavy weight pressing down on his chest. Each glance we exchanged or word we shared with Logan carried the weight of what lingered unspoken between us. Richard's return added a new layer of complexity to the situation. After dinner that night, Richard suggested we gather in the living room for a heartfelt conversation together. I wholeheartedly agreed. As I sat on the sofa, I attempted to put a smile on my face, even as my heart raced with emotion. Logan sat across from me. Our eyes connected for a brief moment. Unfortunately, we were unable to begin a conversation in the absence of Richard. He shared with us his travel experience and the many responsibilities he felt compelled to update us about. The voices around me echoed, creating a challenge for my concentration. Ultimately, Richard expressed his regrets and departed for work, leaving Logan and me together in the living room. Following his departure, a profound silence enveloped the room, leaving both of them in a moment of quiet reflection. Nervous, Logan remained in the chair, his hands clenched tightly as if trying to shield himself from my presence. I lowered my head as a wave of guilt washed over me. I truly empathize with the situation, but it's time we share this with Richard. He deserves better treatment. He does not deserve it. Logan paused abruptly and returned to my side. "How do you feel about it?" He posed the question. I released a heavy breath. The heaviness of my next words pressed down on my heart. I believe it is crucial for us to seek a resolution to this issue. Living in this state of uncertainty has become unbearable. His gaze was locked onto mine. His face reflected a deep blend of pain and empathy. He whispered gently, "You are right. What significance does that hold for our situation?" It was incredibly challenging for me to choose between Richard and Logan without discovering a resolution. Yet, I understood that it was no longer feasible to maintain the secrecy. If we did not act promptly, the truth would unfold in a manner that could bring heartache to everyone affected. I responded honestly that I still did not have the answer. He hardly noticed my voice. It is important to be true to oneself. It is essential for us to grasp the significance of everything that connects us. Logan nodded in agreement, but the sadness in his eyes was unmistakable. He came closer to me. He sat next to me on the sofa, his hand gently resting on mine, and for a moment we embraced the stillness together. We felt the weight of our situation pressing down on us. His gentle touch brought a sense of warmth and comfort, prompting me to lie down beside him, resting my head on his shoulder. He quietly conveyed his wish that things were not as they are. I gently expressed that I felt the same way, but it seems unsustainable to keep up this pretense indefinitely. We stayed in that position for a while, enveloped in the silence of the room, occasionally interrupted by Richard's voice echoing from the room next door as he spoke on the phone. It felt like the calm before a storm, knowing that eventually we would have to confront what lay ahead. The following morning, as Richard was leaving for work, I unexpectedly encountered Logan in the kitchen. The silence between us held all the words we had yet to share. The tension was palpable, and it became crucial to initiate a conversation to determine the next steps, yet the words seemed to elude me. Ultimately, I shattered the stillness with a resolute declaration. Logan wore a solemn expression. Truly, I had been reflecting on that as well. We gathered around the kitchen table, finding comfort in each other's presence. The gravity of our conversation lingered heavily for both of us. I paused for a moment, trying to gather my thoughts, even though it felt challenging. The situation felt incredibly daunting and intricately complicated. My words started to emerge with uncertainty as I shared my feelings for Richard. It is essential for me to acknowledge the situation that is unfolding between us. Logan, you hold a special place in my heart, and navigating this situation concerning my marriage to your father is truly challenging for me. Leaning forward, Logan rested his elbows on the table, sharing his inner turmoil with Anna. I care deeply for you, and the thought of causing you pain weighs heavily on my heart. At the same time, the idea of being apart is equally difficult for me to bear. The words he spoke touched my heart deeply, and I could feel the tears welling up inside me. I felt a deep sense of urgency to keep him from escaping, yet the reality of our situation was unmistakable. The circumstances were overwhelming, and we needed to shift our direction to prevent complete devastation. I shared my need to pause, speaking softly as I sensed a gentle quiver in my voice. It is essential to approach the nature of this relationship with a sense of calm and understanding. It may be important to create some space in order to attain it. Logan's face grew blurred, and I could sense the pain reflected in his eyes. He emphasized the importance of creating some space between us. His emotions echoed in every word. A wave of sadness washed over me as I sensed the weight on my heart. It appears to me that this is the sole path to truly grasp our feelings. Finding a solution feels unattainable without Richard uncovering it. For a long time, Logan remained quiet, his eyes locked on the table before him. I noticed the deep conflict etched on his face, a reflection of the same turmoil I felt within my very core. With a deep breath, he let out a soft sigh and whispered, "I understand if you believe this is the best choice." I reached out and took his hand gently. "Logan, it deeply pains me to think about being apart, but it's essential that we are honest with ourselves and with one another." He lifted his gaze, revealing a deep sense of sorrow and empathy in his eyes. He shared his deep worry about the possibility of losing Lauren, even though he was prepared to do what it took. After that talk, I feel exhausted, yet there's a sense of calmness that washes over me. We stop pretending and start to embrace the truth of our circumstances, which marks the beginning of our journey toward understanding how to move forward from that point on. Even though it was challenging, it was the sole path to continue progressing. In the days that followed, Logan and I chose to maintain some distance from each other, hoping to allow ourselves the necessary time to reflect on the situation. It was intricate, challenging, yet vital. I was uncertain about what the future held, but I knew that no matter what happened, we would confront everything side by side. Eventually, a decision had to be made, but for now, we were moving forward gradually, delving into the complex emotions that had brought us to this point. Regardless of the situation, I felt the deep bond that linked us together. What brought us together would endure, even as the situation evolved. That night, as I lay in bed, the house was enveloped in a soothing silence, and I felt a deep sense of peace wash over me. Even though it wasn't perfect or easy, it felt genuine, and that was sufficient for that moment.